Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As you all know, that Shaykh Arshad doesn't need any introduction. He's, mashallah, he has been coming here for many, many years and enlightening us about the Iman and the Dawah of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But just to tell you a little bit, Shaykh Ahmad Arshad, for approximately last 2 decades, has been a student of Islamic scholar and in spirituality under the traditional scholarship of Mashayikh. For over 17 years, he has remained in close company and under the guidance of highly respected Shaykh Zulfiqar Ahmad. Shaykh Arshad Ahmad did his bachelors in computer science and graduate work in management and systems from New York University. He works at NYU as a part of a new initiative known as Global Learning, Innovation, and Defining Education in the 21st Century. And this is also a very motivational for our youth. Normally, we believe that the person who is doing work of deen doesn't have to be good in dunya. As you know, the Sheikh did his bachelor's in one of the best schools, and that's where he is teaching now. So inshallah, without any waste of more time, I'll ask Sheikh to enlighten us with inshallah.
الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تكن من الغافلين سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our master and our creator, and he has sent down each and every one of us as insan, as humanity, as ashraful makhluqat, as the best of creations. And each and every one of us, we are a manifestation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creativity, His majesty, and His absolute power. Maqsad-e-Zindagi, or the purpose of our life, is to learn ubudiyyat, servitude towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the sole purpose of our existence is to be able to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in each and every instance of our existence. That is our maqsad. That is our purpose. My dear brothers, we find that in our life, we hold those things dear to us that are fulfilling their purpose. Otherwise, they become useless to us. So for example, a person buys a car with the expectation that it will take him from point A to point B. And if that car fails to do so, it has lost its purpose, just taking up space. You buy the latest gadget. You want to be able to communicate to another person. You want to be able to call another person. And if a person is unable to use his phone to do that, then it's lost its purpose and then you just throw it away. Exactly like that, a human being who understands his maqsad, his purpose, that he has to have remembrance of Allah Ta'ala, he has to have servitude towards Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, is a person who has purpose in his life, who has meaning in his life. Otherwise, he's just taking up space in this dunya. He's just taking up space and resources in this world. That is all he's doing. So, as Muslims, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have been given a worldview that you take this life as a journey, and throughout every step of this journey, you are mindful of presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a great ni'mah, and this is a very central theme of the Quran as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders in the Quran, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, O those people who profess to Iman, Uzkurullaha dhikran kathira, that you must do abundant dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Kathir basically means more than half. And in the tafsir of this ayah, another ayah is given that the intelligent people are those, not who have gone to the best of colleges and universities, who have the best of businesses. The intelligent person in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that person, الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ. That person who remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while he's standing up, while he's sitting down, and while he's lying down on the ground. And in all reality, these are the only three states that a person is in. Either we are standing up, or we are sitting down, or we lie down. So what this ayah is telling us, we must be able to become people who remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala perpetually throughout our existence. Not some of the time. As a matter of fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in another ayah mentions people of hypocrisy, people who are munafiqeen, and then he mentions one of their signs and symptoms, that these are the people who are unable to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala illa qalila, but very little. That they do remember, but very little. And then the word that is used for them is mutazabzibeen. Literally what every one of us is going through. This roller coaster ride of Iman, up and down and up and down. As they call it in our language, ada titra, ada batir, right? Trying to ride two boats at the same time. Sometimes you feel spiritually high, and other times you feel so low that you have to wonder even if Iman is present within you. That is a person who's basically half and half. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants each and every one of us to become people of remembrance, people of dhikr, people who are conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presence in their life. There's another ayah in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about human condition. And he says that people's hasab, or their reckoning, is drawing near, yet they are in a state of heedlessness. Yet they are in a state of ghafla, meaning they're not really thinking about it. The reality that is going to hit them really hard one day, they're not really thinking about it. They're thinking of life as an ostrich, right? When ostrich thinks of harm, that harm or danger is coming, what does it do? It tries to hide its head within the sand. So exactly like that, we have become people who want to hide ourselves from the reality of our existence. Imam Ghazali rahmatullah ta'ala alayh explained this in a very beautiful way. He said that there was once a person, he was walking through the wilderness, when he heard a lion roar behind him. And he looked behind and he saw this vicious lion that he was approaching him. And so afraid of his life, he started running, started looking for places he could climb, couldn't find anything. And then he saw that there was a well in the ground. And so he decided that I will just jump in and I will be able to protect myself from the lion. So as he was about to take the plunge, he looked inside and there was a very poisonous snake that was swimming around in the water. So now he had no option, he couldn't jump down. The lion was drawing near and the snake looked up, it looked at the person, it looked at its next meal in anticipation that this person will jump down and I'll eat it. At that point, he saw that there was some grass, some weed growing on the wall of the well. So he decided that I will hang from it and I will wait it out. The lion will give up, the snake will give up, either I'll be able to walk up or I can jump down. So he literally hung himself from that grass, that weed that was growing. And while he was hanging, in this state of despair, just put yourself in those shoes for a few minutes. That you're literally hanging from a few threads. And you have this lion looking down on you, and you look down and there's a very poisonous snake just swimming around waiting for you. And you have no idea, you don't know what to do, you're stuck there. So at that point, he saw there was a hole in the well, and there two mice came out of it, a black and a white. And they came and they started gnawing and nibbling on the grass that he was holding on to. Now he got even more worried, because the only thing that he was holding on from, it was getting cut. So he became more hopeless, more despair, more afraid. So while he was thinking about what I need to do, right that instant he felt something drop on his cheek. And he touched it, he put it in his mouth, and it tasted good. He looked around. There was a beehive, and the bees had left, and it was full of honey. And so this honey was dripping down, and it was falling on his face as well. So what does this person do? He closes his eyes, he opens his mouth up, and he starts enjoying those drops of honey that are coming on his face. So Imam Ghazali rahmatullah, he gives this example, and he says that this is the human condition. That lion that was running after that human being is actually Malakul Maut. And Malakul Maut is basically waiting for his signal. And he will come to each and every one of us, my dear brothers. Each and every one of us. We're just waiting our time. He'll come, and he will snatch away our soul. He'll take away our soul. And that snake that was swimming in the water, that is the punishment of the grip. I mean, that is our ultimate home. We can be worried about the real estate and the condition of real estate right now, but that is the real estate that we have to go into. And we have to be held accountable for what will happen to us. And then he says that grass, that weed that he's hanging on from, those are the days or the amount of time left in the life of a person. And that black and white mice that are gnawing and nibbling, these are the days and nights. They're just taking away, they're just eating away our life. People think, subhanAllah, that they're spending life. I mean, we're not really spending time, we're just spending ourselves. We're just wasting away. That is the haqiqah, that is the reality. There were people before us who used to roam the same streets, used to live in the same houses. And they used to think as well that this world belongs to them. Whatever happened to them? Whatever happened to our parents, our grandparents, their parents? Where are they now? Where are each of they had their wishes, they had their desires, they wanted to become something as well. Whatever happened to them? Right? All of them, they had to literally taste the flavor of death, and they're being held accountable for the kind of life that they led. And so Imam Ghazali rahmatullah ta'ala says that the black and white mice, they are the days and nights of our life that are being gnawing and nibbling away our life. And that honey that is being dripping on his face, this is actually the lazat, the enjoyments of life. And so the human condition is that people, they have literally closed their eyes. They have forgotten about Malakul Maut. They've forgotten about their death. They've forgotten about accountability. They've forgotten that they won't be living here forever, 50, 60, that is the max, 60, 70 years, that's about it. And what they have done is they've closed their eyes and they're just busy enjoying their desires and whims, the lazat of the dunya. And so the Quran tells us that this is the human condition as well. The people's hisab is drawing near, yet each and every one of them, they are in a state of heedlessness. They are in a state of ghafla. This ghafla is forgetfulness, heedlessness, not remembering something. On one level, we can say that not being able to remember something is a blessing. Otherwise, we would never move on in our life. If somebody passes away, if there was some kind of grief and sorrow, we would never be able to move on from our life. So on some level, there's definitely rahmah within this. But when this ghafla becomes such an extent that we are unable to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or we become forgetful of why we are here, then it becomes a problem. Then it becomes a major problem. And so we find that it is this ghafla, heedlessness, not being aware, forgetfulness. whether it is with other people around us, or whether it is with our Rabb, our Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it always breaks relationships. Isn't that what happens? A lot of time when you're doing marriage counseling, people come and what is the chief complaint that the wives are saying? You know, the husband, he's always forgetting, he's not mindful of my needs. Meaning he's in a state of ghafla. He's in heedlessness. I'm telling him what to do and he just forgets. I tell him to go and buy such a thing, he goes out and he forgets. He comes back and what is he? Oh, my dear darling, I forgot. And so this ghafla, this heedlessness, when it is towards other people around us, it causes for relationships to break. We want our friends to be attentive towards us. We want our spouses to be attentive towards us. We want them to listen. We want them to be aware of our needs. This is a big requirement. If somebody calls himself or herself your friend, and they are looking elsewhere every time you are talking to them, he says, well, you're not listening to me. You're not aware of my needs. And so that friendship will break. Same principle happens when a person's relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is concerned. When we start experiencing this state of ghafla, that we forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it becomes a problem. Because that basically is showing that the ahabiyyah, the love of the dunya, has really engrossed and encompassed us to such an extent that nothing else matters to us now. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants people like that to wake up. Wake up from that sleep, from that slumber that we are in. And to get rid of that ghafla, of that heedlessness. That is why the ayah that was read at the beginning, وَلَا تَكُمْ مِنَ الْغَافِلِينَ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders, do not become from those people who are heedless towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this idea is very strong in the Quran. It's very strong in the Quran. Being able to remember, not being in a state of ghafla towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So much so that there is an ayah of the Quran, and it is a very strong ayah. Meaning it's a very powerful ayah. The message in itself is very powerful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about jinn and insan. And he says that we have prepared for hell multitudes of jinn wal ins. That for hellfire we have created jinnat and insaniyat. And the same entities where Allah Ta'ala says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that I have not created them but for my worship. So Allah Ta'ala in general is saying that their main maqsad was this ibadah. However, there will be multitude of jinnat and insaniyat who have been made for hellfire. And then Allah Ta'ala starts counting their symptoms and signs. And He says, لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقُهُونَ بِهَا, that they have qulub, they have hearts with their fu'ad, with this inner intellect, inner sight, that they do not use. Meaning they have lost that inner sight, the inner eyes that Allah Ta'ala has blessed every human being. They have eyes but they do not see. Meaning they are unable to see the reality of their life. They cannot see beyond the material and the physical self. They cannot find purpose in their existence. So they have eyes, but they really do not see. Literally, they are blind inside. They have ears, but they do not listen. I mean, this is something that all of us, we can relate to. When we sit in the company of our mashayikh, of our elders, we are hearing what they're saying, but we're not really listening. Because there's a difference. Because when a person sits down to listen, they sit down with the intention of making a change in themselves. But if words are just entering one ear, they're just exiting the other, they're not listening at all. It's just hearing something, hearing some noise that we just try to wade through. It's just white noise for us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning about those people that they have ears, but they do not listen. And then He goes a step further. He says that these people, they are like animals, dumb beasts. These people are like dumb beasts, that they should not even call themselves human beings. So he's talking about very specific kind of people. People who have hearts, but they do not really use them. They have eyes, but they do not see, and they literally see with them. They have ears, but they are unable to listen through them. And so these people should not even call themselves human beings, because they are like dumb beasts. And then one step further, balhum adhal, that do not even call them dumb beasts, because they are even worse than them. It's a very powerful ayah, because Allah Ta'ala is talking about human beings like us. Same human beings. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says, لَقَدْ قَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمْ. That I have literally honored the sons of Adam. But then there's a subset that Allah Ta'ala is talking, and He's counting these signs, and then Allah Ta'ala calls them animals, dumb beasts. And these dumb beasts, they're even worse than dumb beasts. And what are the people that you're talking about? That Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala in the end of the ayah says, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْغَافِلُونَ. That these are the peoples who are in a state of ghafla, heedlessness. Literally people who are unable to remember Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala in their life. They have forgotten their purpose. They have forgotten their Rabb. They have forgotten His commandments. And even when they know, they are unable to bring themselves to act upon. أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. That they are like animals, even worse. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْغَافِلُونَ. That these are people who are in a state of ghafla. So this is a very strong reprimand. That people who think that you're unable to remember Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, who are unable to be mindful of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala in their lives, it's not just that, it's okay. No. These people are being reprimanded in the strictest of manners in the Quran. That we're being called even worse than animals. And this is the reality, because you do find animals who are in general more aware of their surroundings. We have a small kitten in our house, and it's ajib, the tale of this kitten. When we got this kitten, it was domesticated, meaning we brought it and she was living with us. And so our ghafla literally rubbed off on it. And so it became very heedless, just like us. Meaning when people would walk past it, it wouldn't know. People would clap next to it, people would jump next to it, and it would just be very unaware of its surroundings. Then one of the weekends, I had to travel to one of the states, and this kitten was left outside. And while it was spending time in wilderness, when it really in reality experienced life like it is meant to be experienced, when we came back, now it was very jumpy. Now over little sound, this cat would just jump. All of a sudden his ears were just roaming around and moving around, and it's always so aware. Literally a small footstep, it would just look here and there. And so ajib, this experience was ajib for us in the sense, then when people themselves are ghafil, even their ghafla rubs off on other people. It rubs off on other people. That is why Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, in the Quran, He orders when people take up their leaders in their community, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says a very specific and unique sign of people that we are meant to follow. It's not people who are eloquent in their speech, who can give great lectures. And what sort of people are we not supposed to follow? Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala mentions in the Quran, وَلَا تُطِعْ مَنْ أَغْفَلْنَا قَلْبَهُ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. That do not follow those people whose hearts we have made ghafil of our zikr. Follow, when you're choosing leaders amongst yourselves, don't make those people your leaders whose hearts are heedless towards Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Because in reality, those people are worse than animals. So what Allah Ta'ala wants from each and every one of us is to wake up from our sleep. We have killed our inner spirituality, our ruhaniyat, We're just fulfilling each and every desires of our nafs. We have literally killed it. And instead of learning ubudiyyat towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have become abdul nafs. We have become slaves to our own selves. And so, in general, if we were to kind of raise ourselves and look at ourselves every single day, what do? We're just daydreaming. We are living in some kind of dream world, each and every one of us. We wake up, it's the same monotonous schedule. Like drones, we're just walking, we're just eating, we go to our work, we're just doing stuff. Even when we're driving, we're just in a state of, when people honk, we wake up for a second, then we go back into that sleep, into that dream world. We're just daydreaming. It's ajeeb. So our 24 hours, we are just experimenting and we are just rehearsing our ghafla over and over again. Meaning there's this umbrella between us and this reality. And we just don't want to break the shell. And we don't want to smell what the reality looks like. It's like an egg, like a chicken in the egg. You can talk to the chicken, you can tell the chicken that there's a great big world out there. But the chicken said, no, this is the world that I'm interested in, within the shells. And so we have siloed ourselves into our own little lives, unaware of what is going on around us in the world. Unaware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unaware of our impeding accountability that is coming, each and every one of us. Despite having buried our own loved ones in cemetery, in their qubur, we're still in that state of things. And my dear brothers, this is the reason, this is the biggest reason that we are unable to remove sins from our lives. This is the biggest reason. Ghafla is the root cause of all the sins around us. All the sins that we do. It's the ghafla towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're not aware of Allah, and what happens? It becomes easy for us to listen to the whispers of shaitan. It becomes easy for us to listen to the stubbornness of our own nufus. And so we just say yes sir to every single time this order comes from our nafs. Do this. Yes sir, we are present. Labbaik, we are hadir. Do this, we are hadir. And this is why we are unable to literally take ourselves out from our own rut that we have gotten ourselves into. This gutter that we have fallen into, we are unable to bring ourselves out of it. Now the Deen realized how important presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And so 1400 years ago, this behavioral psychology is being taught, that wherever you are, huwa ma'akum fa inama kuntum, remember that Allah Ta'ala is with you. Allah Ta'ala is watching you. Right? All these messages are being drilled into our intellect. So this presence can come into our existence, and so we are able to stay away from a life of sin. Because isn't this what human nature is like? Human psychology? Anytime we become aware of somebody else's presence, that somebody's watching us, we change our behavior. We change our behavior. Very small example, and probably very relevant example, that literally everybody above 16 who drives a car has experienced this. You're driving on a highway and you know the speed limit is probably 55, and because of that daydreaming, you keep on pressing the accelerator, and what happens? 55 becomes 65, then 75, then 85, right? And we're just driving, unaware of our own speed that we are driving at. And what wakens us from this heedlessness? Anytime we hear like a siren in the distance, or when we see those blue and red lights blinking on the side, what happens? Literally, we just wake up. We wake up. We wake up from the sleep and everybody's just pushing the brake. And that awareness is with us for literally like a couple of miles. And then again, we close our eyes, the inner eyes, and we go back into that slumber, into that sleep, and we start, start speeding again. So what is that wakefulness for a few minutes? This is the awareness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants every person of Iman to inculcate in themselves. To be aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all time. That is why, modern stores, the big stores, all of them have, these CCTVs. Because it affects human behavior. You travel to London, every corner, literally every corner, there's a camera that is looking at you. Now, there may not be a camera, there may not be an eye behind the camera. But just the fact that the person thinks that he's being watched, his psychology changes. And his behavior changes. And he will not commit any crime against authority. Because being watched, it affects our nature. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us this message 1400 years ago. That, O insaniyat, O mankind, there is a Rabb who is with you. نَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. He's closer to you than your own carotid artery. إِنَّ رَبَّكَ لَبِالْمِرْصَادِ. He literally looks at you like a hunter looks at its prey. And so we are being reminded of these things so we are able to keep ourselves away from a life of ghafla, which leads us to a life of sin. To be able to stay away from a life of disobedience. And in all honesty, if we had this 24 hours a day, none of our gazes would ever err. Our tongue would never err, never make a mistake. It would never lie. We would never cheat. We would never be deceitful. We would never hurt another person if we were being watched. When was the last time there was domestic violence when there's a cop sitting right next to you? Would a husband do something to the wife? No. Why? Because somebody in a position of authority is right there. People change. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to remember that all authority belongs to Him and He is with us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that is why it is said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows the khiyanat of your eyes and that what is hidden in your hearts. We're being made mindful of that fact. And so we find that the first generation of Muslims, they all had this maqam. It is known as ihsan in the deen. And we need to understand that there are two kinds of vigilance towards Allah. And both of them are present in the Quran, and they're both present in ahadith as well. Very strong presence. One sort of consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is known as taqwa. And we have read this word throughout the Quran again and again and again. Sometimes people translate as being afraid of Allah. But what it literally means is that you have so much fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you are conscious of what will happen, of the ramifications of that. So, taqwa is a sort of God consciousness in which the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ghalib on a person, is dominant on a person. That is taqwa. And on the other side, the Quran also talks about, and hadith talks about it as well, is the concept of ihsan. It can literally be translated into excellence, but as the famous hadith of Hadith of Jibreel, in which Hazrat Jibreel alayhi salam came and inquired to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about what this ihsan was, mal ihsan. His answer was, an ta'budallaha ka'annaka tara. That you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if you see Him. So again, this is another kind of vigilance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in this kind of vigilance, the jamal or the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ghalib. So taqwa is where fear is ghalib, and jamal, and where the muhabba or the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that kind of vigilance is ghalib, that is known as ihsan. And so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he tells us that you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or your existence should be كَأَنَّكَ تَرَى, as if you see Allah subhanahu. We know we can't see Allah ta'ala with our eyes in this dunya. That has been saved for the akhirah, for the Jannah. But as if you see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you can't reach that level of vigilance and awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's presence, then the lower level of this ihsan is that know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees you. This is the least that each and every one of us must have in our life. And so we find that in the lives of Sahaba Kiram, this was very prevalent. They would come and spend time in the company of Rasulullah, in the suhbat of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they would reach this level of ihsan and taqwa. They would reach this level. Couple of ayahs and couple of ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One has been narrated by Hazrat Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, in which he says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one time we were walking and we came across a sahabi. He was from the Ansar. So he's telling the story, he's narrating that we were walking and we came across a sahabi, Hazrat Haris radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he saw this sahabi, he posed a question to him. كَيْفَ أَصْبَحْتَ يَا حَارِثَ? That, oh Harith radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, how was your morning? How did you spend your morning? And Hazrat Haris radiyallahu ta'ala anhu answered, أَصْبَحْتُ مُؤْمِنًا حَقًّا. That my morning was that I was a pakka moment, complete moment. Complete moment. I mean, that is a strong, very, very big claim to make. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked him that every claim that a person makes, there's a dalil to it. So what is the dalil? What is the proof of the claim that you are making? And subhanAllah, the answer that this sahabi gives, and this is a very young sahabi, mind you. We're not talking about the older Sahaba Karam who may have spent a lifetime in Iman and no, this is a very young Sahabi. And so his answer to the proof of his being a moment of a strong mu'min is that my soul has become averse to the dunya. Ajib. Meaning that I have attained zuhd fi dunya. That my soul feels averse to this dunya and whatever is in the dunya and has fled from it. So he's explaining his kayfiyah of zuhd. This is what zuhd is. When people talk about zahideen, this is what zuhd does. You do not feel attracted to what is in the dunya. And you flee from it. Even if dunya is around you all the time, your heart and your soul flees from it. And then he says, because of that, I have made my nights sleepless. Not by playing video games. Like youth do today. They're on their video games, they're on their internet, they're watching TV. So this Sahabi is saying that I have made my nights restless as well, meaning he was in a state of ibadah throughout the night. And I have made my days full of thirst, meaning that in that strong summer, desert summer, that I fast every single day. That my days are spent fasting. It is now, and this is his ihsan, this is his presence of Allah that he's explaining. It is now as if I am in the front of the throne of my Lord, in front of Arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning I literally feel Allah's Arsh in front of me all the time. This is the presence that I have. When you read a hadith like that and when we look at our own state, the only thing we are aware of are our cell phones, which are buzzing in our pockets. That's it. That is when we become aware. Who's communicating? Who's talking? Somebody send me a message. Somebody send me a WhatsApp. Somebody send me a Facebook. This is when we become aware. And the Sahabi is saying that my feeling of ihsan is that as if I see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's throne, His arsh right in front of my eyes. And he says, it is as if I am gazing upon people of Jannah visiting each other. And it is as if I'm gazing upon people of fire trying to help each other in the fire. Allahu Akbar. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he heard this answer, he said, you have gained vision. You have gained vision, now stick to it. Now stick to it. You're a person of sight. Now it is important for you that you stick on to this kayfiyah that you have, that you hold on to this kayfiyah. And then when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam walked further, he turned towards Hazrat Anas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. He said, this is a servant whose heart is enlightened with iman. So when people say iman, and they talk about yaqeen, and they talk about, the halawat, the sweetness of faith and feeling iman, this is the state of iman that is being described. That this person has vision, he has enlightened his heart. His heart is enlightened with iman. Meaning he is in the presence of his Rabb all the time. Tell me, how will the person like this ever sin? How can a person like this sin? That is why they were in a state of hifaza. Another Sahabi, Mu'az ibn Jabal radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, one time he came upon Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he was weeping and he was crying. And while he was in this state, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam posted the same question to him. Kayfa asbahta ya Mu'az? That how was your morning? And his answer was the same, that I was a pakka mu'min. And he was asked the same question, that do you have any dalil? Do you have any proof for that claim that you're making? And he says that I do not get up in the morning each day, except that I do not expect to live until the evening. Meaning I wake up in the morning and I have no expectation that I will live to see the night. And I experience night and I do not expect to see daylight. Subhanallah. This is his worldview. He's not making plans for decades or hundreds of years of life. And he says that I do not take a single step except that I do not expect to follow it with another one. Meaning that my yaqeen that I will face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala soon is that I take one step and I am not even sure if I will be able to take the second one. Ajib, subhanallah, this hal, this kayfiyah, this existence of Sahaba Kiram is truly amazing. This is why they were special people. And he says, it is as if I see the day of judgment where every nation is kneeling and every nation is called to its book of records, with its prophet next to it and the idols that they used to worship next to it as well. And it is as if I can see the punishment of people of hell and I can see the reward of people of Jannah right in front of my eyes. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam answered to him, he said that you have gained ma'arifah. Now hold on. This is true ma'arifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So having that kind of presence, and it's not even just Akabir Sahaba Kiram that they used to have it. This was present and prevalent in the whole generation. This awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is why it is said that Hazrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, one time he was walking through wilderness and he came across a shepherd. And he said to the shepherd that we are travelers, we are hungry. Why don't you sell one of your sheep to us so we can sacrifice it, we can make food from it, and we'll share it with you. And he said that I do not own these sheep, so I cannot sell it to them. And so Abdullah ibn Umar wanted to test him. So he said, why don't you just give us the sheep and then you can make the excuse that a wolf came and the wolf ate the sheep. And this shepherd, who is a shepherd? A person that we may think of like not very sophisticated, not very educated, right? He's just tending to the sheep. His answer is that if I give you that sheep that I do not own, فَأَيْنَ اللَّهِ, then where is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Where is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he was so amazed by his answer that throughout his life he would always narrate this story, that this is what Iman, this is what Islam is. That when it came, it transformed people so much that they could be sitting in the wilderness, tending to their sheep, and a very normal existence. And yet they had so much presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they would never take a wrong step. This is what Islam is all about. This is why it's called a deen, a way of life. Because we don't need all sorts of millions of rules and regulations around us to keep us in check. We don't need all the cameras around us. All we need to have is that presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything about that person changes. Everything about that person changes. And so they were trained like that. One time, Hazrat Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he was walking. He had the habit that he used to roam the streets of Medina Munawwara at night. So one time he was walking the streets when he heard two women talking. It was a milkmaid, and she was talking to her daughter. She was saying that our animals have not given enough milk today. But tomorrow when the customers come, they will ask for the usual amount of milk that they look for. So why don't you go ahead and just put some water in it? Nobody will know. Nobody will find out. And so this person, very alarmed, this daughter, she answers back. She says, Mother, Amir al-Mu'mineen has told us that we're not supposed to be doing this. And the mother said, well, Amir al-Mu'mineen is not here. Meaning the authority that you're so afraid of, he's not here. And she said, Mother, you're saying Amir al-Mu'mineen is not here, but the Rabb of Amir al-Mu'mineen is here and he's looking at us. She refused. Hazrat Umar was so impressed by it. Next morning, he called both the women to his court. He found that this young lady, she was unmarried, and he married her to his own son. That person with so much iman, so much taqwa, so much awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, she should become part of my family. So even young women, they had this. And so they were able to stay away from a life of sin. But isn't that what is difficult today? People going to schools, people going to colleges, they come and it's the same story. Everywhere you go, it's the same story. We think we are unique, but it's the same story everywhere. Gender issues and, like peer pressure and all of these things, people are talking about and sometimes complain about. The reality that these things affect us to such a degree is because we have not trained ourselves to become aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the reality. As Muslims, we have forgotten this third aspect of ihsan. Hazrat Jibreel alayhi salam asked him about Iman, and he answered him with all the aqaid. He asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about Islam. He told him about all the physical aspects of the deen, the 5 fundamentals. And then he asked him about the inner aspects of the deen as well. And this is the aspect of ihsan that we tend not to work on in our lives. Badi mushkil se, we work so hard just to be able to pray 5 times a day. And then we become so happy with ourselves that we think it's enough. That we have our salat, even if we do not have dhikr, we're not present in our salat. As long as we have the physical form, that's all that matters. And so, usually we are spending our lives in a state of utter heedlessness and ghafla. And Islam came in, Sahaba Kiram, subhanallah, even when they had the opportunity to sin, they would stay away from it. It is said that there was a Sahabi who had some relationships with another woman in Makkah Mukarramah before he became a Muslim. Now, after he accepted Islam, after a while he came back to the city, and that woman came across him. And she said, well, you are this person, do you remember me? We used to have good times. And My husband isn't here, so why don't you come inside and, we'll relive our memories. Right? Imagine yourself in that position. Full invitation. We don't usually sin because we actually don't get the opportunity to sin. So this Sahabi is getting full invitation. He says, no. Now I'm a Muslim. I'm a different person. I will not listen to what you're saying. And this woman tried to hold his hand, and he just backed off, and he said, if you touch me, I will strike you on your hand. Stay away from me. I have accepted Islam. Whatever happened in the past, it happened. Now I will not even get near this guna. This is what Islam is. Like Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, قَالُوا مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ. That you say, I seek protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so people don't take sins and disobedience towards Allah ta'ala easily. They don't take it as a small thing that will happen and, maybe we'll do tawbah, we'll do istighfar later on. For us, sins have become such a light thing. We don't even think about it most of the time. It has become our second habit now. We don't think about it before, we don't think about it during doing it, and we don't even think about it after doing it. We don't even think about our sin. So that is why we are unable to experience Islam as it is meant to be experienced. And then the Sahaba Karam, anytime they would make a mistake, anytime they would err, it would bother them so much that they wanted to just purify themselves. There's a story from the woman of Ghamidiyya that she committed a mistake and she came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and she said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, purify me. Ya Rasulullah, purify me. And so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was so full of mercy that when she came and she admitted to what the mistake she had made, he turned his face away. She came from the other side. Again, Rasulullah says, I made this mistake, purify me. He turned his face again. Third time, same thing. And then Prophet inquired, is she in her senses? Is she in her senses? I mean, she's claiming that she has done this, but is she even in her senses? People say, yes, she's in her senses. And the woman, she said that I committed this kabira guna, and I have become pregnant. I'm carrying its weight because of that. I'm carrying its weight because of that. And so Rasulullah, he always wanted to give opportunity to forgive people. So Rasulullah said, well, if that is the case, why don't you go away and give birth to the child and then come back? Now this woman, she has every opportunity to go away. Every opportunity. But 9 months spent, and when she gave birth, she came back to Prophet ﷺ. And she said, Ya Rasulullah, I had made this mistake. I want you to purify me. And she was holding the baby. And so Prophet ﷺ said, well, the baby is here. Why don't you go and take care of the baby for 2 years and then come back? That's ajib. When you hear this narration, it's ajib. One side you see this rahmah, this compassion, this mercy that Prophet ﷺ keeps on showing. And the other side you see that this woman, she's burning in the fire of remorse, that she wants to be purified. So she goes back and she spends 2 more years. Now literally 3 years have passed. And she did not go away, she did not run away. And after 3 years, after those 2 years passed, she came back, said, my son, he's eating on his own now, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I made this mistake and I want you to purify. So Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam then gave the order for her to be purified. And when that amal was being done, another Sahabi, he made had some strong words to say about her. And Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam just put his hands on his lips and said, do not say anything about this woman. She had made such tawbah for the mistake that she made, that her tawbah would have been enough for every person who has sinned on this planet. But this was their case, that when they would sin, they would take it seriously. It wasn't just another day that had passed. It wasn't just another action that they had done. These people were dead serious about their iman. And it bothered them. It bothered them. Anytime they would sin, it would bother them. They would lose their sleep over it. they would lose their sleep. For years they would lose their sleep. I mean, you look at this story and you have to wonder, 3 years. 3 years is enough to forget. But I mean, every night she must have burned in the fire of remorse. She kept on coming back. She kept on coming back. Because this is what Iman is. That any time a person sins, that it affects you. That you feel that something of your soul has been lost. But when we are walking around with dead hearts, then obviously we don't feel that anything is lost. We've become people who are completely desensitized to a life of sin. Completely desensitized. Kuch farak nahi padta. No effect whatsoever. So much so when people actually come and tell us that what you're doing is wrong, some people give us nasiha, we consider these people are enemies. मैं उसे समझूं हूं दुश्मन जो मुझे समझाए है. People that come and give us nasiha, these are our enemies now. Because we have become so desensitized to such a lifestyle. So it is important, my dear brothers, that we bring back the presence of Allah. And this is the difference between us and awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Each and every one of us, we know what is right, what is wrong. It's not like we don't know. We have more access to knowledge and information today. It's easily accessible to us. We know, but we're not vigilant of it. Ilm hai, istihzar nahi. So it's sitting down somewhere in our akal somewhere, but we're just not aware of it. That's why our hearts, they do not have khashiyah. That's why we don't feel yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We talk about yaqeen, we don't have yaqeen. That is why it is easy for us to lie, to cheat, to be deceitful. Nothing is in our control. We have lost self-control. Our nafs controls us. And so, presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very, we will engage in acts of ibadah as a habit, because we have to do it, because our parents are telling us. Because if we don't, we'll probably lose some kind of status, or our wives will start talking back to us, so namaz nahi padta, go pray, right? So we pray because of that. But other than that, that presence is not there. Ata ibn Abi Rabah, rahmatullah ta'ala, one of contemporaries of Imam Abu Hanifa, rahmatullah, he said, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspired this on my heart, that these people, when they are sinning, they close off all the doors and windows through which makhluk looks at them. Right? When we sin, what do? We close off all the doors, we make sure nobody's there, we're all alone, right? Lock the door up. So saying that people close all the doors and windows through which makhluk, people are looking at them. But they cannot close the door through which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking at them. So out of all the entities that are looking at them, do they consider me the least? Do they consider me the least? And it's so true. Even if we have a 2-year-old next to us, we will stop ourselves from committing some action. Even for a 2-year-old. But we know Allah Ta'ala is with us. We say it, we read it in the Quran. If I ask, do we believe Allah is with us? Everybody will raise our hands. But yet, when it comes to sins, we are most forgetful of that fact. Allahu Akbar kabira. Allah. That is why, for our elders, anytime they were seduced by temptations, and this is for youth as well as for the adults, they would really remind themselves of what will happen to them if they give in. And they would sometimes teach the other person a lesson as well. One time, there was a sheikh, he was actually seduced by a woman. And so he wanted to teach her a lesson. So he said, okay, if you're seducing me to commit an action of guna, of a sin, let's go inside the masjid and do it. Let's go inside Baytullah, the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and commit this action. And this woman, she looked at, what are you talking? Are you insane? You want us to commit this action inside the house of Allah? And he answered, same Allah that is inside the masjid, He's outside as well. He's the same Allah, He's everywhere. So when you say that you want to commit this action, why are you ashamed or embarrassed to commit doing this in the masjid and not embarrassed of doing it elsewhere in your life? And she understood and she made tawbah. So we need to be mindful of, would we commit certain actions while we're sitting inside the masjid? Or let's say in haram, would we do certain things? No, we won't. It's the same Allah who's watching us everywhere, my dear brothers. And that is the state. We should be mindful of that. We should be mindful of that. And Rasulullah always used to inform the Sahaba Kiram of stories like that. For example, that famous hadith of Zulkifl. It is said that Zulkifl was a person of Bani Israel, and this person was very wealthy. But he was wealthy, but he would always take advantage of people. Meaning when people would come and ask him for money, he would always want something, some guna, some sin in return. One time a young woman came to him and she said that, I have this need. I have nobody who can fulfill this need. So can you please give me some money? He said, okay. I will give you the money if you will allow for me to womanize with you. And she said, no, I have never done this. And she left. But she was in so much need, she came back. Same question, same answer. Third time she came and she was in utter despair. And she said, I need this money. And said, okay, I've given you my condition. If you want this money, then you have to spend a night with me. Said, okay, do what you have to do, but please give me the money. So that night, he approached a young woman. And this young woman, she was shaking, literally shaking with the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Said that, I haven't forced you. Why are you shaking like this? He said that this is the seal of Allah that has never been broken. Ittaqullah, so have fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When she said Ittaqullah, have fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Zulkifl, he was overcome by that fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. And he gave her the money. He said, okay, go away. I will not do this action with you. She left with the money. That night, Zulkifl, he passed away. Next morning, it was written on his door that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has accepted his tawbah and has forgiven each and every sin that he has done. Allah. So this is how Allah ta'ala rushes. When a person, he has the power to commit an action of guna, a sin, to hold yourself back and not do it, this is what real strength is. This is what real strength is. And the Ravi of the hadith, the narrator of the hadith says, that I have heard this hadith from Rasulullah at least 25 times. 25 times. Imagine how many other Ravis, narrators had heard the same hadith from Prophet. Meaning he used to tell these stories to his companions so they would become vigilant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. That this person had a chance, but he had fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he was able to stay away from it. He was able to stay away from it. And this is what tawbah does. Such an amazing act. How the Shaykh al-Hadith Mulana Zakri rahmatullah narrates the story of a butcher, and this butcher, he fell in love with one of his neighbors. And he confessed his love to her. And she said that even though I like you as well, I'm afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I cannot continue with this. And he was so affected by it, he said, if this woman, she had so much fear of Allah, then I should do something as well. And so he set on a journey that I will go to a city and I will spend time with the mashayikh and I will become righteous myself. I will become righteous like that girl. And so he went, and along the way he met another sheikh who was going the same direction, and they decided to travel together. Now it so happened that there was a shadow of a cloud on their head. The butcher, he thought that it was because of the sheikh, and the sheikh thought it was because of him as well. And now they were traveling for a few days, and when it came for them to depart their ways, the cloud, the shadow, it came on the head of the butcher and not on the sheikh. And the sheikh, he was surprised. He said, That what is the reason? What is that amal you have done that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put the shadow of a cloud on your head to protect you from the scorching heat? What have you done? You must be a great wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he started crying and he said that I have not done anything in my life. The only thing I have done is that I have made the intention of doing tawbah. That is all I have done. And Allah Ta'ala is so Rahim, so merciful, that He has literally put a shadow over my head to protect me. This is what tawbah is. That is how Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala rushes. Ataytuhu harwala. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala rushes to a person who takes first few steps towards Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. That is what Allah Ta'ala does. So when we have opportunities like that, saying that we won't do it, I mean, this is a great act. This is an act of a Nabi. Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, he had every opportunity. He stayed away from it. So any time a person acts like that, he's acting like the Nabi of the time. He's acting like Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam. So much so that this is a direct ticket to Jannah as well. It is written in books that there was once a king, and this king, once he came back to his quarters and he wanted to spend time with his wife, but the wife was not in the mood, and she started rejecting him. And the more he wanted to get close to her, the more he rejected him. So much so that she actually uttered the words that, stay away from me, Jahannami. That old person of Jahannam, stay away from me. Now, when the king heard those words about himself, he became angry as well. And he said that if I am a Jahannami, if I am a person from Jahannam, then I gave you 3 talaqs. Then I gave you 3 divorces. Next morning, when they were in their senses, now they had no idea because it was a conditional divorce. So they approached certain scholars, and the king did not want to leave his queen, and the queen did not want to lose her husband as well. But they didn't know if the talaq or the divorce took place or not. So they were asking different scholars. They had no answer to give because it was such a conditional. How can you say if a person is Jahannami or not? So they came upon Imam Shafi'i rahmatullah ta'ala alayh. They asked him, and this was what happened, and can you please tell us, can we stay together as husband and wife? And Imam Shafi'i rahmatullah ta'ala said that I will need to ask the king something in private, and then I can give a fatwa. And so he took him aside and he asked him, had there ever been a situation that you had complete control of committing a guna, a sin, a disobedience, and you stayed away from it? He said that throughout my life, I only can think of one instance, that one time I came to my quarters early, and there was a young maid, she was making my bed. And my shahwa my lust overcame me, and I locked the door and I approached the young girl. And that young girl, she knew that I was the king and I had complete control over her. But she turned to me and said, Ya Malik, ittaqillah, that, O king, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when I heard those words from her mouth, Allah Ta'ala's fear overcame me, and I just couldn't take it, and I just opened the door and I asked her to leave. This is the only time when I had complete control over committing a sin and I stayed away from it. Imam Shafi'i rahmatullah said, if this, what you say, is true, then I give you fatwa that you can continue living with your queen as husband and wife. Now he became very happy. When other scholars, they asked him, what was the fatwa? He said, this is what he said. They came to the Imam and said, how can you give such a fatwa? He said, I am not the one giving the fatwa. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who gives this fatwa. He said, where? So Allah ta'ala says in the Quran, وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ, that those people who have this khawf, the fear to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَنَحَنْ نَفْسَ عَنِ الْحَوَىٰ, and they stop their nafs from hawa, from desires, فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَىٰ, for them Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made paradise in heaven. And this person had this control over sin, but he was afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he backed from his desires of his nafs. Allah ta'ala is saying, فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَىٰ, Allah ta'ala has made Jannat for such people. So my dear brothers, even in our lives, we don't need laws and regulations. And even for our youth, always remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us. Allah ta'ala is watching us. This is the lesson that our mashayikh teach us. When we go to our mashayikh, these are the adhkar that they teach us. So we become vigilant of Allah. We become vigilant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is said about a young boy who was the uncle of Junaid Baghdadi rahmatullah ta'ala alayh, that when he was young, he said that my uncle used to come to me and he used to tell me, Dawud Ta'i rahmatullah ta'ala alayh, that my uncle used to come to me and he used to say, do dhikr of Allah. Said, what kind of dhikr should I do? Said, every night before you go to sleep, you should say, Allahu ma'i, that Allah is with me and Allah is watching. So I used to recite this and say this to me, do tazkar of this every single day to myself before going to sleep. Allah is with me, Allah is watching me. Allah is with me, Allah is watching me. And I said it so many times that yaqeen that I am being watched by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala became inculcated in my heart, and I was able to stay away from life of sin. Just like that, we need to teach our young ones, our youth, same kalimat. So they understand that Allah ta'ala is hadir and Allah ta'ala is nazir. So they don't need calls from their parents. So it's enough for them that Allah ta'ala is watching them and they are able to stay away from a life of sin. So my dear brothers, inshallah ta'ala, we make dua that Allah ta'ala blesses us with His presence. Our mashayikh, they say something, they say, Jodam ghafil sodam kafir. That the person, if the breath he takes in ghafla, it is as if he has spent that breath in kufr. So we must become people who are present. And we can live in this world, we can do what we want to do, and we can still be aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah ta'ala says in the Quran, Rijalun, that my men, my true men are those people who do not become distracted by trade and commerce and zikrullah from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it means we can do our trade, we can do our businesses, we can do our school, we can do our college, we can do all of this, but we can still be vigilant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so for that purpose, we need to sit with our mashayikh and we need to learn how to get this inculcated in our hearts. So in whatever situation we are, just like that shepherd, we always say, فَأَيْنَ اللَّهِ, when the chance of sin comes in our life. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the opportunity to live a life of huduri, of presence, of awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah ta'ala protect each and every one of us from ghafla, from heedlessness, from forgetfulness towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Truly Allah ta'ala doesn't forget us. Just one small story and we'll end the talk. The story that there was an idol worshipper, and he spent days and months calling out to his idol saying, Ya Sanam, Ya Sanam, Ya Sanam. And that idol never replied back. And only once he was drowsy and almost fell asleep. And instead of saying, Ya Sanam, Ya Sanam, he said, Ya Samad, Ya Samad, Ya Samad. He invoked the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replied, Labbaik ya abdi, my servant, I'm present. And the angels asked, Ya Allah, he was even looking for you. He was asking that Sanam, that idol, Sanam means idol, and he was calling out to the Sanam, and he was in a state of ghafla, heedlessness, and he called out to your name. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replied that he called out to that Sanam, and that Sanam never replied. He can never reply if he calls out to me, even in the state of ghafla. If I do not reply back to him, then what is the difference between me and the idol? Allahu Akbar Kabira. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always vigilant of us. He's waiting for us. He's calling out to us. Ya ayyuhal insan, ma gharraka bi rabbikal kareem. What has divorced you from your kind and merciful Lord? He's calling out to each and every one. That ayah is for each and every one of us. And we should read that ayah, and we should get rid of any hopelessness and despair. And we should say, Labbaik, Ya Allah, that we are present, we come back. We reject shaitan, we reject our nafs. And Allah, despite our life of sin, we make true tawbah and we turn back to you. Allah Ta'ala, open up your gates of mercy for us. And we will find them open for us, inshallah Ta'ala. So may Allah Ta'ala accept each and every one of us in His presence. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us His huzuri in our salat and outside as well. May Allah Ta'ala make us people of taqwa and ihsan. Ameen ya Rabbul Alameen. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah. We'll make a small dua inshallah. Subhana Rabbi Allah wa hab Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammadin wa barik wa sallim. Ya Allah Kareem, our kind and merciful Lord. Ya Allah, we are your sinful and deceitful servants, Allah. Ya Allah, today we sit in your house, in this masjid, Allah, with nothing but sins over our shoulders, with burden of sins of our shoulders, Ya Allah Kareem. Allah, we come with nothing but admission of our faults, with remorse of our faults, Allah. Allah, we seek your forgiveness, Allah Kareem. You are Arhamar Rahimeen, you are the most forgiving. You love to forgive, Allah. Oh Allah, we ask that you forgive each and every one of us, Ya Allah Kareem. Allah, we have spent a lifetime in heedlessness, in ghafla. Allah, we ask you that whatever time is left in our life, you make it a life of awareness of you, Ya Allah Kareem. We're able to remember you, we're able to praise you. Allah, we are able to stay away from a life of sin because of that, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Allah, whatever sins that we did in the morning, forgive them, Ya Allah. The sins that we did at night time, Allah, forgive them as well. Allah, the sins that we did individually, Allah, forgive them. Allah, all the sins that we did out in public, Allah, laughing, Ya Allah Kareem, Allah, forgive them as well. Allah, whatever sins we did knowingly, Allah, forgive them. Whatever sins we did unknowingly, Ya Allah Kareem, forgive them as well. Oh Allah, take away the taint of sins away from us. Allah, take away the memories of sins away from our hearts, Ya Allah Kareem. Ya Allah, give us a hatred of sins, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, give us a hatred of those amal that you dislike, Ya Allah Kareem. Allah, make us, Ya Allah, make us into servants that you're pleased with, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Allah, we understand that we have been filthy throughout our lives, but Allah, only you can clean us, Ya Allah. Allah, you yourself say in the Quran, "Idfa billati hiya ahsan." Ya Allah, that you order that that the evil should be swayed away, Allah, with rahmah, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Allah, we ask that you show us this rahmah, you show us this goodness, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Allah, take away our evil with your goodness, Ya Allah. Give us tazkiyah of our nafs, Allah. Clean our nufus, clean our thinking, clean our hearts, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Allah, clean our dead hearts, Ya Allah. Change them, Ya Allah. Allah, make them alive again, Ya Allah Kareem. We cannot continue living like this, Ya Allah. Allah, we are so saddened by our own existence, Ya Allah. It's so despicable, Ya Allah Kareem. Allah, we are so empty and void inside, Ya Allah. We are so saddened by our own life. Oh Allah, we ask that you come in our life. Allah, you transform our life, Ya Allah Kareem. Make us into righteous and pious human beings, Ya Allah Kareem. Make us into Muslims who are able to submit themselves to your will, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Allah, get rid of ghafla from our lives, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Allah, help us experience the sweetness of our iman. Oh Allah, give us the lazzat, enjoyment of our sujood, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Allah, Ya Allah Kareem, help us draw ourselves near to you, Allah Kareem. Allah, you gave us this life so we can recognize you, we can become close to you. And we have wasted this life, Allah, running after dreams, Ya Allah Kareem. Our dreams have become our nightmares, Ya Allah. Allah, help us get rid of them, Ya Allah Kareem. Make us, Ya Allah, constructive and productive Muslims, Ya Allah. Oh Allah Kareem, give your presence and awareness in our hearts, Ya Allah. Oh Allah Kareem, please accept each and every one of us. Ya Allah, give us a life of Quran and the Sunnah of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Help us be attracted to his way of life, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, help us adopt the worldview that he gave, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Allah, we know that we are never alone, that you are always with us, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Allah, help us become aware of that closeness, Allah. And Allah, because of that, help us stay away from sins, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Allah, we ask that you bless this masjid and whoever congregates in this masjid, Ya Allah Kareem. Ya Allah, we ask that you bring people of sincerity in this masjid, Ya Allah. Whoever is making efforts in the masjid, Ya Allah, Allah, we ask that you give them ikhlas, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Allah, accept them and give barakah in their lives, Ya Allah. Allah, give us halal and tayyib rizq, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Allah, help us make right decisions in our lives and bring barakah in our decisions, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Allah, help us serve humanity, Ya Allah Kareem. Help us please you, Ya Allah, by doing your dhikr and ibadah. Ya Allah, help us please Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Allah, by completely submitting ourselves and walking his path and doing complete ataat of his sunnah, Ya Allah Kareem. And Allah, help us serve humanity, Ya Allah Kareem. Allah, there are so many Muslims around the world who are in so much problems and trials and tribulations. We ask that you take those trials and tribulations away from them, Ya Allah. Oh Allah, help us help them in any way we can, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Allah, make the Muslims into an ummah again, Ya Allah Kareem. Help them become into an ummah, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Allah, help us bring deen back into our life. Allah, whenever we have friends who are like shaitan, who drive us away from our deen, Allah, we ask that you help us stay away from such friends, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Allah, help us stay away from shaitan and nafs, Ya Allah. Oh Allah Kareem, Ya Allah, accept all of our du'as, Ya Allah. Allah, we are in your blessed months, Ya Allah. Ramadan will be soon upon us, Ya Allah. Help us prepare for that month, Ya Allah Kareem. Allah, that month is coming and we don't want to waste that time again, Ya Allah Kareem. Allah, we want to make something of this month, Allah. Help us prepare for it so, Allah, we are able to achieve, Ya Allah, we are able to achieve the maqsad of Ramadan, which is taqwa. Allah, we fast every year, Ya Allah Kareem, but Allah, where is the taqwa in us, Ya Allah Kareem? Allah, help us gain taqwa in our lives, Ya Allah. Oh Allah, help us become righteous, Ya Allah Kareem. Oh Kareem Aka, please accept all of our du'as with your rahmah, with your fazl, and your karam alone, Ya Allah Kareem. Khudavanda maqsood man tu'i wa razayatu, min mahabbatu ma'arfat zawq shaqut bidde. Sallallahu ta'ala ala khiri khalqi Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in, bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Ameen.